There's a big push in the press right now to label Vladimir Putin a war criminal. That's concerning for a whole lot of reasons. Joe Biden, or whoever's pulling his puppet strings, leading him around, changing his diaper, is calling for Putin to be put on trial like the Nazis at Nuremberg after World War II. It's not actually going to happen, but we should worry about where all of this is going. Pfizer butt slut, sellout, globalist neocon Lindsey Graham, the warmongerer, is calling for Putin to actually be targeted for assassination. You have to understand, the purpose of all of this is to lay the groundwork for an intervention in Ukraine. The military-industrial complex is salivating over an intervention, and then, of course, regime change in Russia. If they try that, we don't get regime change, by the way. We'll get a nuclear war instead, but nobody seems to care about any of that. They're being reckless in other ways, too. The Biden administration is screaming from the rooftops that Vladimir Putin might use chemical weapons or other WMDs in Ukraine, and that if he does that, we'll have to retaliate. That should make you shudder, honestly, because Putin has never shown the slightest sign that he plans to use weapons like that. But we saw this exact same playbook in Syria, too, if you'll remember. Bashar Assad was actually winning that war. Literally, the only way that he could screw that up was by getting the U.S. to intervene after Obama had drawn his red line, remember. And then, boom, so conveniently, there were 2 chemical attacks in Syria out of nowhere with no evidence for who committed it. But instantly, our government and our fake lying, complicit criminal media, the propaganda arm for the globalist machine, blamed it on Assad. We didn't have proof of any of that. By the way, actual observers on the ground actually argued that we had no idea who did the attack. Some said that it could have been an accidental explosion, a false flag, or an attack by one Syrian rebel group on another. But that, of course, was immediately thrown out. Why? To try and race us into another war in Syria. And now they're playing that exact same blame game in Ukraine. And the consequences could mean nuclear war. Do you think a false flag chemical attack is too far for our government, or for the Ukrainian government for that matter? Think again. But let's pull back even further on this. Are they even telling the truth about the war crimes supposedly being committed by Russia? We certainly have no reason to believe these liars over at Fox or any other network, for that matter. The same people claiming this lied about the causes of the war. They lied about the ghost of Kyiv, about a maternity ward. They've lied about everything. They lied about Russia attacking a nuclear power plant. It's just lies everywhere. But here's the truth. If you really go looking for war crimes online, the one with serious evidence are being committed by Ukraine, not by Russia. Ukraine are the ones handing out guns and bombs to random civilians without uniforms, turning everyone into a combatant. That's a war crime. Ukraine are the ones arresting and executing their own people without trials for treason, a war crime. Ukraine are the ones with videos where they gloat about executing or mutilating POWs, a war crime. Ukraine is the country whose politicians have openly called for the targeting of the families of soldiers fighting in Ukraine, a war crime. But this is all before the war. This war didn't just start 2 months ago. It started 8 years ago. For years, units like this Azov battalion have been committing war crimes against their own people in the Donbass. That's one of the real causes of this war, by the way, along with NATO expansion, as opposed to all of the fake reasons that the press is giving for all of this. Edward Zoll has been looking into all of this, and he joins us now. Edward, thank you so much for coming. So the neocons and the media have been caught multiple times just blatantly lying about everything involving this war, and now they're calling for either the removal or even so far as the assassination of Vladimir Putin.
Yes, and thankfully the New York Times is confirming the true culprits of the massacre in Bucha, for example. It's one of the war crimes that the enemy of all of us, the globalists, like to accuse others of doing what they're doing. The New York Times has confirmed, this is in the front page of their paper that came out of this weekend, that the first group that entered the kill zone, the time of the mass killing, they're saying 400 people in Bucha, was none other than the Azov neo-Nazi battalion. That are the neo-Nazis that are working for Volodymyr Zelensky, NATO-backed Volodymyr Zelensky. The truth is, we can't trust anything they're saying, Stu. Why would we? They have a track record of lying to sell weapons, lying to kill Christians. We forget the other side effect of the false flags in Syria were our brothers and sisters in Christ were crucified in Aleppo. So we don't want to see this happen again anywhere in the world, especially not in Ukraine. But as you duly noted, the Ukrainians were the ones which turned regular people into combatants by giving them weapons. That's breaking the Geneva Convention. I'll tell you what else has been breaking the Geneva Convention for at least 8 years, has been the continuous actions of terror by death squads, literal death squads in Ukraine. Stu, there is record of this. This isn't Edward Zoll's opinion. This isn't Stu Peters' opinion. This is documented fact. I've got pictures to show it. Everyone wants to talk about the theater, for example. Do you remember the theater in Mariupol? They said, look at the massacres, look at the deaths. But they don't want to talk about the young girl, this girl right here, who had a swastika carved into her chest. She was found by an American war journalist, not a right-wing, left-wing, he's just a war reporter, in the basement of the Azov Battalion's headquarters in Mariupol. Okay, that girl's 11 years old, Stu. I had to temper looking at that photo and say, it makes me angry. I think it would make you angry too. Look at a girl before she can get married, before any of this. But she's not alone. Stu, there was also an incident only a couple years ago now in Odessa. We talk about mass killings in the theater. Did you know that the Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazis, were being told to support, that they're responsible going back to May 2014 for a pillaging, firing, and murdering at a trade union house. Reports are at least 100 were killed, upwards about 200 injured. That's far exceeding the number we're hearing out of Mariupol. But guess what? This actually has documented record. The photos here, we've blurred it because this is a family program, but we show the truth, right? This right here is the proof of genocide by the Ukrainians.
Real war crimes, real evidence, real proof. All of that is supposed to be ignored, of course, like the real proof about the fraudulent election on November 3rd of 2020 when the real insurrection occurred here, the real data around these bioweapon shots being falsely referred to as vaccines, the real origination of this fake virus being labeled COVID-19 out of the bioweapons lab in Wuhan, China, the fake narrative surrounding the real evidence about the bioweapons labs that have been discovered now in Ukraine that seem to be strategically targeted by Russia. All of this is supposed to be ignored. Edward Zoll, thank you so much.